Paddy O'Keefe, my editor of the Farmers Journal, was one of the people, distinguished few, who believed that time and money spent on genuine research and putting together a good circle of friends and connections was time and money well spent. Of course, that wasn't what everyone thought, as I would learn from the poet Patrick Kavanagh. He was then a very popular and regular correspondent for the Farmers Journal, and I was the one who took in his copy and signed his little payment chit. On one of his visits, he said to me, "Is himself within?" And he was obviously referring to the editor's office and the editor's room, and the possibility of a bit of a haggle with the editor for more money. He was obviously very disappointed when he heard the answer. The editor's not in. He's in Finland, looking at a new way of making very good silage. Paddy turned to the door to go out, and he looked back at me and said, "That fella never has his arse out of an aeroplane. Does he do any work at all?" That background was very relevant to the foundation of the Irish Guild of Agricultural Journalists. Paddy O'Keefe was in France, met a bunch of friends, other editors and like people who had already been personally involved in setting up their own national organisations of agricultural journalists, and they were in the process of setting up the International Federation. They asked Paddy would he be interested in getting Ireland into the international one, and Paddy said he'd have a look at it. He wasn't that interested really, but he said, "Look at it if you'll send someone over to show us the groundwork." As I say, they were setting up the International Federation at that time, and they had a great pleasure in sending over their president to talk to us. He arrived here, spoke to a few people about it, and we looked at each other and said, we really haven't the numbers to set up something worthwhile. So, as often happened in those circumstances, we said, "Look, we'll put it off for a while. We'll look at it again." And then someone had a bright idea. Why don't we hook up with Northern Ireland, bring them in on equal terms, and then we'll have double the numbers and double the scope. So we decided that a carload of 3 or 4 people would go from the south and meet 3 or 4 people from the north at a halfway point. Dundalk was an obvious one. The car from the south was occupied by Paddy O'Keefe, myself, Michael Dillon, and a man called Con Murphy, who was then editing a magazine for the Irish Beet Growers Association. We met in a hotel in Dundalk, and we got on, I have to say, like a house afire, and had a lot of interest and enthusiasm for the idea. So we said that we'd go out and have a look for any other potential members. We'd about 6 altogether in the south, but we counted it up to nearly 20, and that was enough to be gone on with. Our first meeting was held in Dundalk, and it consisted of a lecture from General Costello, who became our first president. The car from the north brought Billy Morrow from the Belfast Telegraph, a well-known agricultural journalist, and 2 other well-known public relations men of the time, William Carter and Arthur Campbell. Between us, we could count up to about 20 potential members. After the business was accomplished and everything we had to do by way of work was done, we sat back at the table to have a drink and a chat, and Billy Morrow, looked around and saw a piano in the corner. He opened it up and produced a fine tenor voice and a few old come-alias that he sang, and in doing so he set a tone for guild meetings from then on with do the business, sit back, have a bit of music, have a few songs from totally unexpected sources, and this created an atmosphere of good work and healthy cordiality. The idea was actually a very good one, and it spread, because when we went into the IFAJ, we began to punch way above our weight at international meetings, and our people were noticed pretty quickly for their enthusiastic way of life. I remember on one occasion in Heidelberg in Germany, a few Dutchmen came over to me and they said, "Do you mind if we sit at the Irish table for dinner? You seem to be the liveliest people here." Of course they were welcome and joined us for dinner and became good friends with us. Meantime, back on the home ground, the Irish Guild was making steady progress through the 1960s. And communications in general was given a great boost by the launch of RTE. Justin Keating was producing two very good programmes, and he fought for prime time, and I underline prime time, for agriculture on television. And he won his battle. And it brought farming out of the back pages of the paper, or their own little corner for farming, onto the front pages of the national and provincial newspapers. It was in the news, and there was plenty of news around at that time.